Well, I am once again with Dr. Dan Green, Executive Director of New Life Resources, and we are talking about just mental health and not only the problems and issues that we're dealing with mental health, but some practical things that we can do as we walk through this very unique time in history. Dr. Green, today I want to talk about just this idea of grief. It's something that we don't talk a lot about. It's something that we kind of avoid altogether. There's a lot of misunderstandings about grief. But you have said in many of our conversations, we are dealing right now with so much grief because we're dealing with so much loss and change. You want to expand and talk more about that?
Good. Happy to, because while it's unpleasant, it's so important. Loss is our constant. We're constantly experiencing loss. At the most basic level, even being here, we can't be doing anything else. But the losses that we've encountered this spring and summer now into the fall, for many of us, it's unparalleled in our life story. Loss requires us to change, to learn how to live without the loss, how to adjust. For we have become accustomed to having what we have, and when it's gone, how do I take care of myself? How do I comfort myself? How do I make meaning out of life? That's all disturbed when we have significant losses. The process that we encounter when we've had a great loss, we call grief. And grief is defined as our natural expected reaction to a loss. It's natural. It's how we're designed to react to a loss.
Hey, Dr. Green, just to interrupt you, we often think about it's a loss of a loved one or something, but you're talking about it much broader than that.
You are correct, Mark. I'm talking about any loss that is significant to us that we find value or comfort. It might be the loss of a job. It might be the loss of an opportunity, a loss of social connection time. It might be the loss of health or loss of hope. Any significant feature of our life, when that is disrupted and gone, it throws us, it disorganizes, sends us into a chaos. And this is painful. Grief is much more than just the pain. It's also involves the confusion, the body aches, the whole sense of self crying out, longing to have back what is gone. And in the work of grief, we'll sometimes talk about the principle of irreversibility. We can only truly grieve something, adjust to being without it, when we acknowledge that it's gone. I can't undo the loss. I can't get it back. And that can be very painful, to come to that place of saying goodbye. It's not.
What are some of the let me just call them unhealthy ways that we deal with grief?
Well, a lot of us try to pretend like it didn't matter, or I can just get over it. A lot of us will pretend like all I need to do is just feel sad and then it'll all be okay. Or if I don't need to feel sad. These uncomfortable emotions have a very important purpose of helping us say goodbye. And if we avoid them, we're not going to be able to say goodbye. A lot of people abuse alcohol or other substances or other types of activities, buying things, sex, food, to try to feel better instead of moving through the pain of the loss so that they can make the adjustments of being without and then welcoming what is available now.
So, and you just said it right there. That's the key, isn't it? It's moving through the pain of the loss. That's really what grieving is, right?
Yes. If we try to move around it, we never adjust, and we go on living a bit out of reality, like the loss didn't really occur, and trying to continue as if, well, I can't because it really did occur. We can think of the work of grief. There's 4 components. To accept the reality of the loss, that it's irreversible, it's gone, goodbye. To experience and move through the pain of the loss. The pain helps us let go, release our attachment to what is gone. Then we can adjust and learn how to live without what we had so that finally we can invest in the present and receive what is available right now. We have opened up a space on our hearts to receive the present.
Oh, that's great. In the our last conversation, you mentioned this whole idea of lament, and talk about that a little bit more and how that helps us deal with grief.
Yes, lament is kind of a parallel process where we, in our grief, we're acknowledging the reality of the loss, we're crying out, we're expressing. So many of us like to just be intellectual, and I can talk about it, but it's so uncomfortable. I don't want to feel it. Lament, we go into the experience of the thoughts, the feelings, the perceptions, and we express it in complaints. We cry out in questions, in crying, in weeping possibly, maybe in anger and rage. We may use words, we may use emotional utterances. We may use our body as we express with our whole self, artwork, song, music. In lamenting, we're dealing with the reality of the consequences of this loss, dealing with what is, even though it ought not be this way. Lament offers us is a validation of how significant the loss is, how great its consequences are. And it gets us to a point where we can, maybe even through our exhaustion, in saying goodbye, quiet ourselves to receive God's presence with us.
Yeah, I heard you say to me one time, you said, okay, in grieving, and then I've just kind of attached this to lamenting, because I didn't know how to lament about a year ago. It was, you said to me, identify what was lost. And then the second thing is then say goodbye to it. Identify specifically and then say goodbye to it. And so what I've done is I started to lament that. And it's really, honestly, it's been helpful for me because I didn't even think about it, but I was really acting out of the pain and the hurt of the loss. And so honestly, it's been really, really helpful for me.
It validates the reality of the meaningfulness of our lives. And all of us need to restore meaning, purpose in life that loss threatens.
Well, I hope this week that you will identify one thing that you've lost and during this time, and that you will then take the step in saying goodbye to it, whether it be maybe just write it out, scream it out, yell it out, pray it out, whatever it may be, as you begin to grieve that loss. Once again, thanks, Dr. Green, for your time. If you know of this would be helpful for someone, we want to encourage you to share it or subscribe to our YouTube channel, as we got one more week with Dr. Green. As next week, we're going to talk about how do we get really practical about helping other people, our kids and our spouses and significant others, as they wrestle through this very challenging season as well. So we'll see you next